The night we lost, the locker room was so quiet you could hear the drops of sweat hitting the tile. I'd never seen the guys like that before. Shoulders slumped, eyes empty, no one even bothering to pull their cleats off. We'd been undefeated all season, and this was supposed to be the championship game. Senior year. Last shot at the title. And we blew it. I sat on the bench, shirt clinging to my back, head in my hands. My chest felt tight, not just from the sprint-heavy game, but from that slow, bitter ache that comes when you know something's over. Final score, 3-2. We were up 2-0 until the last 20 minutes. And then, I don't even know. We unraveled. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jordan. He was quiet too, his jaw clenched, staring at the floor like he could rewind time just by glaring hard enough. He was one of our midfielders, aggressive, fast, always talking shit during games. One of those guys who could get under your skin and make you respect him for it. We weren't exactly close. I mean, we got along. But he was the type who stuck to his crowd. The loud ones, the girls, the parties. And I was not that. I kept my head down, played hard, and didn't talk about the guys I liked in the locker room. Not that I needed to. I wasn't dating anyone. Never had. As I sat there, trying to summon the energy to move, Jordan walked past me and nudged my foot with his cleat. "Yo," he said, voice low. "You coming out with us tonight?" I looked up. "I don't really feel like it." "That's why you should come," he said. "We all feel like shit. That's the point. We get drunk, we yell about it, and we forget for a few hours." I almost said no again, but something in his voice, tired but weirdly warm, made me nod. "Yeah, all right." 2 hours later, we were at someone's apartment. Half the team already shirtless, half the room stinking of cheap beer and fast food. I stuck to the couch, nursing a drink, watching Jordan across the room. He was in his element, laughing too loud, dragging teammates into dumb drinking games, calling everyone bro like it was his first language. And yet, every time I looked away, I'd feel it. His eyes on me. At first I thought I was imagining it, that weird post-loss brain fog making me paranoid. But then it happened again, and again, until finally he made his way over, drink in hand, dropping onto the couch next to me like we'd been best friends since freshman year. "You're quiet," he said, voice just loud enough to be heard over the music. I shrugged. "Just tired." "Yeah," he leaned back. "You played your ass off, though. That second goal? That was sick." Didn't matter in the end. He glanced at me. Still mattered to me. There was a pause. One of those thick, slightly buzzed silences where it feels like the air is holding its breath. I turned to say something, anything, and found his face closer than I expected. He didn't say anything. He just leaned in and kissed me. No warning, no hesitation, just his lips on mine, quick and clumsy and unexpected. And then he pulled back like he'd touched a hot stove, his eyes wide. "Shit," he muttered. I'm drunk." That was... wow. I sat there frozen, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it over the music. "I didn't mean to," he started, standing up. But I grabbed his wrist. "Jordan." He looked down at me, face tense. "I'm not saying stop," I said quietly. And that was the moment it all changed. Jordan didn't sit back down right away. He stood there, blinking like he wasn't sure if I was messing with him or if maybe he hadn't heard me right. "I'm not saying stop," I repeated, quieter this time, like I was afraid someone might overhear even though no one was paying attention. He looked down at my hand on his wrist, like that single touch was the only thing anchoring him in the room. Then, slowly, he sat. We didn't kiss again right away. We just sat there for a few long minutes, my fingers still loosely around his wrist, the noise of the party buzzing around us like we were underwater. Someone in the kitchen shouted something about a beer run. Laughter echoed from the hallway, but none of it registered. Jordan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and ran a hand through his hair. "I wasn't planning that," he said. "Like at all." I figured. He glanced sideways at me. "You mad?" "No," I said honestly. "Just surprised." He let out a breath. "Same." Then he laughed. Quietly, a little bitter. I think I've had too much. I think we both have. Another pause. Then he asked, "You want to get out of here?" I didn't know what he meant by that. I don't even think he did, but I nodded. We slipped out without saying anything to the rest of the team. No goodbyes. Just grabbed our jackets and ducked out into the cold night air. The streets were mostly empty, late enough that even the bars were thinning out. Jordan's truck was parked a few blocks away. We didn't talk on the walk there. The silence between us wasn't awkward, though. It was more like waiting. When we climbed into his truck, he didn't start the engine right away. He just sat with his hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. "I'm not drunk enough to pretend that didn't happen," he said. I looked at him. His jaw was tight, his mouth pressed into a line. That cocky swagger he wore like armor during games was completely gone. "You don't have to pretend," I said. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "I don't know what that was. You kissed me." "I know, I just—" He stopped, exhaled. "I don't even know what I'm doing." I didn't say anything, I just watched him. Then, slowly, he turned toward me, eyes searching mine. "You ever think about this?" he asked. "Like, before tonight?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I have." His eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up. "Damn," he muttered. Before I could say anything else, he leaned over the console and kissed me again. This time, slower, more certain. His hand found the back of my neck, pulling me in. And I didn't resist. The kiss deepened, the air between us growing heavier. I felt the shift in him. Less panic, more need. He wasn't trying to shock himself into clarity now. He wanted this. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. I just closed my eyes and breathed him in. Sweat, beer, something warm and reckless, and let myself feel it. The weight of the loss was still there, but now it felt different. Like it had made space for something else, something we hadn't expected. We didn't go back to my place. Or his. We just stayed there, in his truck, parked under a flickering streetlight, surrounded by empty sidewalks and leftover snow piles from last week's storm. The heater hummed low, blowing warm air that barely cut through the cold, seeping in through the windows. Jordan leaned back against the driver's seat, eyes still on me. One hand on the wheel, the other resting on his thigh, flexing and relaxing like he didn't quite know what to do with himself. "Should we talk about this?" he finally asked. I gave him a small shrug. "If you want." "I don't even know where to start," he said, running a hand down his face. I've never." "You don't have to explain it all tonight." He looked at me, eyes a little softer than they'd been earlier. "Yeah, maybe I just don't want to ruin it yet." "That's fair." Then he smiled. Barely. But it was there. We talked for a little while. About nothing, really. Teammates, next semester, whether coach was going to bench us for showing up hungover to practice. It felt normal. Like we were just two guys, late at night, catching our breath after a long game. But the space between us felt different now. Charged. I didn't want to push him. I could tell he was still figuring things out, and I wasn't going to be the guy who made this harder. But then, right as we were about to call it a night, he reached over and touched my hand. Just a light brush, like he was still testing the waters. "You coming to practice Monday?" he asked. "Of course." "You think it's going to be weird?" I paused, then said, "Probably, but maybe it doesn't have to be." He nodded slowly, staring at where our fingers almost touched. Then he let his hand rest there, next to mine, close but not quite overlapping. "I don't know what this is yet," he admitted. I turned to him. "You don't have to." He let out a long breath like he'd been holding it in all night. "But you're not mad?" "No," I said. "I'm not mad." He looked at me again, this time like he wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. Instead, he leaned in again. Slower this time, more thoughtful, and kissed me like he meant it. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after Jordan dropped me off and I stepped back into my apartment, everything still felt like it was buzzing. My skin, my thoughts, the way his mouth had tasted like beer and something warmer underneath. I didn't know what the hell was happening, and yet I didn't want it to stop. The next morning, I woke up to a single text. Jordan, you good? I stared at the message longer than I needed to before replying. Me. Yeah. You? He responded almost instantly. Jordan. Kinda hungover. But yeah. There was a beat. Then another text. Jordan, you want to go for a run or something later? I smiled at my screen like an idiot. Me. Sure. Text me when. And just like that, it felt okay. Not normal. Exactly. But not as messed up as it could have been. Later that afternoon, we jogged a trail just off campus. It wasn't about exercise. It was about avoiding silence, keeping our feet moving so neither of us had to look directly at the feelings crashing into us like waves. But still, we ended up sitting on a park bench afterward, both winded, both avoiding each other's eyes. So, Jordan said, stretching his legs out in front of him, last night wasn't just me being wasted, if you were wondering. I glanced over at him. I mean, I was drunk, he added quickly, but I knew what I was doing. Okay. He looked at me. Okay. I mean, I didn't exactly stop you, I said, smiling slightly. He let out a nervous laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, that's what I keep thinking about. The wind picked up a little, and we sat there, quiet for a few minutes. Then he said something I didn't expect. I used to think about it sometimes. I looked over. What? You. I don't know. Just wondering. He didn't elaborate. But he didn't have to, and I didn't push. I just said, same. He looked at me for a long second, then nodded. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. It was just real. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. After that weekend, things didn't explode into drama like I'd feared. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't even talk about it much. But the shift was there. Quiet, steady, like the hum of something just beneath the surface. At practice, we acted the same, or we tried to. Maybe I noticed the small changes more than anyone else, the way Jordan would glance at me when he thought no one was looking, or how he'd linger a half-second longer during drills that paired us up. In the locker room, everything stayed casual, but I could feel it in the air, this charged silence between us that hadn't existed before. We didn't touch, we didn't flirt, but we knew. And sometimes, after practice, he'd offer me a ride even if I hadn't asked. And sometimes I'd say yes, even if I had my bike. He'd park a few blocks from my place, kill the engine, and we'd sit there in his truck, not saying much, just existing. One night after a long scrimmage, it was raining, soft, cold, the kind of drizzle that made the windows fog up. We were parked in the same spot as before. The truck was dark, except for the faint glow from the dashboard. I've never done anything with a guy, Jordan said, eyes on the windshield. I nodded. Yeah, I figured. He ran a hand through his damp hair. But I think about it. Not just the stuff we did, like, what if I didn't care what people thought? I stayed quiet. He turned to look at me. You think I'm messing with you? No, I said. I think you're figuring it out. He exhaled slowly. Feels like I'm cheating on a version of myself I thought I had to be. That hit harder than I expected. Because I remembered that feeling. I get it, I said. But maybe that version wasn't the full story. He looked at me for a beat longer. Then, without saying anything else, he leaned across the console and kissed me again. No hesitation this time. No quick pull away. Just a real kiss. Slower. Warmer. And I kissed him back. That kiss in the truck wasn't the last one. After that, things started to happen in moments that felt too small for what they really were. Quiet gestures. Late-night texts. Brushing shoulders on the way to class and pretending it didn't make my pulse spike. It wasn't a full-blown relationship, not even close. But it also wasn't just a one-time mistake. We'd go days without saying anything about it. Then suddenly, I'd get a "you up" at 11:42 p.m., and I'd know. Jordan wasn't coming over to talk about the game film. I remember the first time he actually came inside, we had just grabbed burgers after practice. Nothing romantic. We were both sore, still in our training gear, exhausted but wired from the cold air and too much caffeine. I told him he could crash for a bit since he didn't want to head home yet. Some roommate drama he didn't feel like dealing with. I didn't ask questions. He dropped onto my bed like it was his, arms behind his head, shoes still on. "This your setup?" he asked, looking around like he hadn't seen it before, even though he had. "Yep. It's clean. You sound surprised." "I am," I rolled my eyes. "You gonna fall asleep? Or are you waiting for me to tuck you in?" That made him laugh. But then he went quiet. And then he looked at me. Really looked at me. "You want me to stay?" he asked, softer this time. I hesitated, then nodded. He didn't move, just stayed there for a while, staring at the ceiling. "This isn't just messing around for you, is it?" I sat on the edge of the bed, my back to him. "No, it's not." He let out a slow breath. "Okay," he said. And that night, he didn't kiss me just once. He kissed me slow. On the neck, on the jaw, on the space behind my ear that made my knees weak. His hands on my back like he was memorizing every inch. We didn't do anything physical that night. It wasn't about that. It was about being close, being held, feeling something real after weeks of pretending. I woke up hours later, his arms slung around my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. And for the first time since the game we lost, I didn't feel like I was falling apart. We kept things quiet for weeks. It wasn't like we had a plan or sat down and agreed on a set of rules. We just didn't talk about it outside of those nights, those moments behind closed doors. We were still teammates, still playing side by side every week like nothing was different. And maybe to everyone else, nothing was. But to me, everything had changed. At practice, I'd catch him watching me when we lined up for drills, just for a second. His eyes would shift away fast, like he couldn't help it, but still didn't want anyone to notice. Sometimes, he'd make dumb jokes at my expense just to keep things normal, calling me out for missed passes, clowning on my playlist choices. It was all just noise. I could feel the shift underneath. One night, after we'd won a scrimmage, a bunch of us went out for drinks again. It was one of those nights where everyone's high on adrenaline and cheap beer. Jordan was his usual self. Loud, the center of attention, surrounded by a couple of girls who looked like they were trying to get him to leave with them. And I just sat there in the corner booth, sipping my drink, trying not to let it get to me. But it did, because it reminded me of what this wasn't. Later, when most people had cleared out and the bar was winding down, he slid into the seat next to me without asking. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. "Why?" "You look pissed." I shrugged. "I'm fine." He leaned in closer, voice low. "You sure? You keep acting like you want to hit me." I looked over at him, at that stupid half smirk he used to deflect everything. "I just don't get you sometimes," I said. His smile faded. "Yeah, I don't get me either." Then he looked around, leaned back in, and whispered, "Come with me." I followed him out to the truck again, parked in the same damn spot as that first night. It was becoming our unspoken thing, neutral territory. His safe place to drop the act. We sat in silence for a bit before he said, "It's not them I want." I didn't say anything. "I just don't know how to do this in front of people," he added. "I'm not asking you to make a speech." "I know," he said. "But if I mess this up, it's not just you I'm screwing over. It's me too." I turned to him. "So what are we doing?" He looked at me. "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." That was all I needed to hear. I leaned across the console and kissed him first this time. And he let me. It didn't stay casual forever. I don't even know when the line blurred. Maybe it was the night he brought over takeout just because he said he figured I hadn't eaten. Or when he started leaving an extra hoodie at my place without saying anything. Or when we both started falling asleep mid-conversation and waking up wrapped around each other like it was normal. We never had the talk. No grand declarations. No official label. But the way he looked at me changed. He didn't flinch as much when our fingers brushed. He didn't jump back when I touched his arm in public. And slowly, it stopped feeling like something we had to hide. It was after our last game of the season, a win, finally, that I knew something had shifted for real. We were all out again, loud and loose, jerseys still half-drenched with sweat, everyone riding the high of the win. Jordan was across the bar, laughing with a couple guys from the team. I watched him, thinking how different he looked now. Same guy, same cocky grin, but something softer in the way he carried himself. Then, out of nowhere, he crossed the room, and he kissed me. In front of everyone. Not long, not dramatic. Just a simple, solid kiss like it was no big deal. The noise around us didn't stop. Nobody screamed or gasped. A few guys cheered. One of them high-fived me like he'd seen it coming the whole time. Jordan pulled back with a smirk. I figured, he said, if I'm gonna kiss you every damn time we're alone, I might as well do it when it counts. I didn't say anything. I just kissed him back. Because after everything, the loss, the confusion, the long nights sitting in silence in his truck, we weren't lost anymore. We were figuring it out. Together. And I finally knew that whatever came next, I wasn't going through it alone.